Okay, so let's get started here. So very much welcome everybody to this meeting here today about the proof of concept grants that we will be discussing today. So I will have just a few introductory words and then I will introduce Elin Amstad from Wallenberg Launchpad and the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation. As you may know, I'm Olli Kallionimi, Director of SciLifeLab and recently also Director of the DDLS program, the Data-Driven Life Science program. And just one slide of introduction on SciLifeLab here in the beginning, and also a little bit as to why we are here today, is that we have, as all of you know, technology infrastructure here. We have a research community. Today, both the infrastructure and the research community are all around in Sweden, both in the Stockholm universities in Uppsala, but also at multiple sites, 12 sites altogether across the country. And then recently DDLS, the data science, started as a new program as well. So what the Swedish government has now set as priorities for the next immediate future are excellence, innovation and internationalization. And I think particularly with today's topic, we are really well positioned to be what the government wants to see happen in life science and elsewhere. So you may have seen this announcement already, that this is the COAV and SciLifeLab joint announcement for proof of concept grants. And the key sentence is the bottom one here, gives researchers the opportunity to develop their early stage discoveries to validated methods, products and processes. And obviously we are highly thankful to COAV for providing the funding for it. Göran Sandberg was really a key person in developing this concept, and he cannot unfortunately be here today, but you see his quote here now. I thought about starting from a very obvious thing as to what is a proof of concept, because it's a cozy word that we tend to interpret in a convenient way for each of us. And I thought that I'll just put it a framework here. It's actually a word that started in the 1980s, 70s with NASA talking about a proof of concept and talking about technology readiness levels, which is still a relevant term for our discussion today as well. But what we are essentially trying to do here is to bridge the gap between academia and industrial interests. So this guy here has made a discovery and is trying to hand it out and sort of speak about the technology and how it's fantastic and so forth. And then this guy here representing the industry is just wish to get something from the academia, but maybe this one doesn't understand what this wants or doesn't have what the other one wants. So therefore the main point about the proof of concept is really to try to see how academic discoveries could be bridged to the industry so that we have a starting point for further commercialization and industrial development in the future. I also would like to contrast this with other types of gaps and bridges that you may have seen. This is a slide that I often show in my own presentations as well. It's the bridge between basic research and clinical needs in healthcare. And I would just like to say that the proof of concept is not meant for general translational research. It has to really have a starting and an end point. And the translational research gap, we need to fill with a lot of things. There's infrastructure, there's regulatory, whatever other challenges that need to go there. And then another sort of a definition as the proof of concept is also not industrial product development. So it's kind of in between translational research and this industrial product development. What I would also like to say, and Elin will then further elaborate on these things, is that we typically provide research communities with support on infrastructure or data, and that is really for the whole community. All fields of life science, and as you know, it's really broad. It's not just about health, it's not about drugs only, it's not just about diagnostics, it's all kinds of activities that could lead to innovations. And this concept is true for this call as well. This program that you will hear more about today involves not only the proof of concept grant, but it also involves something else, and it kind of goes beyond the proof of concept, because there's a Wallenberg launchpad concept that is tied into this effort. So not only would you get, if you are successful, a proof of concept grant, you get also guidance in terms of how to commercialize your activities and so forth. So just to kind of put the roles of the two parties, we have COAVE here that plays a major role, first of all, in providing funding for this call. And they will receive a list of applications once the panel has evaluated them. And then their Wallenberg launchpad, the WALP process, provides further coaching of these candidate applications. And then the final selection and funding decisions all happen on the WALP and COAVE side. So this is quite different from the regular grants that you may know SciLifeLab has delivered through COAVE, such that we get COAVE funding at SciLifeLab and then we distribute those grants. That's not how this happens. So the SciLifeLab role is that we've been doing dissemination of this call, and looks like we are at least somewhat successful with many people here and many more people online today. Get community input, like what is needed, what is really useful, and we are still open to that kind of input. And that what we have been doing is to assemble an evaluation panel that can confidentially evaluate these applications, and that this panel then suggests a list of applications for the COAVE to fund. So important for me to say that we are not using SciLifeLab infrastructure or SFO funding for this grant. So this is really funding that comes from the COAVE, and that SciLifeLab is not issuing the decisions. We are recommending a set of applications, or the panel is recommending a set of applications to go forward. And with those quick introductory words, I will now pass it over to Elin, and she will tell you more about the details of the program.
Thank you, Olli. So I thought I could briefly just start with introducing Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation. I guess most of you have heard of us already. We support basic research in Sweden. It's one of the largest private funders, and it's mainly within the medicine, technology and natural sciences that we support. It's long-term grants to excellent individuals that are always reviewed with an international panel. And we have both strategic grants, so major programs, and individual grants to excellent researchers to finance their career. And the foundation is the legacy of Knut and Alice Wallenberg, and has been around since the early 20th century. So in the statutes that is in the foundation's ground, we say that the main purpose is to support basic research and education beneficial for Sweden, or in Swedish landsgangligt. And this is one of the main points that we in the foundation support. In English we call it for the betterment of Sweden. So we really try to, both on an educational level, increase the number of highly educated people within this area, but also to support infrastructure such as SciLifeLab, or more strategic grants, as you will see later. And we have 5 different topics that we really try to stick on to. It's the basic science that we want to finance. It's long-term grants, so you can actually build something with this money. It's freedom to do the basic research, so we don't want to guide you in that sense. And it's the competence. And since a couple of years back, or not so long time ago, we also have innovation as one of the main areas, which we will talk about more now. So as you can see, there are several programs that is granted from COAVE. We have advanced materials with the WISE and the VVCS, so it's the Wood Science Center and the innovative materials for sustainable materials. And we also have quantum technologies, software and autonomous systems, and AI. So that's a little bit different than the life science projects. But now in the life science area, we have, as we said, SciLifeLab, the data-driven life science program, the Human Protein Atlas, and the Wallenberg Center of Molecular Medicine. It's several of these large strategic programs that is funded by Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation. But we also have these individual grants to fellow scholars or clinical scholars and larger projects. And previously, that was where the work of KOAV ended. But since some years back, we have this new program called Wallenberg Launchpad, or VALP, which tries to help researchers within these areas to make something out, go out into society, so have an impact beyond their research and publications. It has mainly been focused on the areas you see to the left here, advanced materials, software, and quantum. But since today, we now launch it widely to the life science community as well, and as a call. So you can apply to this program from today. And then the Launchpad program has the aim of supporting proof of concept and research validation projects. It's still an academic grant, but it's on the more innovative side. There is also a vehicle for starting companies afterwards, where Navigare Ventures can invest in startups spinning out from universities. This is separate tools, so the Wallenberg Launchpad is not connected directly to Navigare Ventures, but there can be projects going in between them, of course. But that's on the commercial investment side. So the launch of today is then the proof of concept call in life science, where life science researchers can apply to these proof of concept programs. So what is this program then about? It's about bridging the gap between basic research and utilization or commercialization of research results, as Olli mentioned. It supports activities that prepare for innovation and commercialization. And as we said, it's focused on methods, products, and processes. It can go to any KOAV-funded researcher, and then you have a long list here of who is eligible. It's also on the website, so you can read the micro text there, if you cannot see it here. But basically all the different programs I showed on the previous slide. It's a grant, as I said, an academic grant, so it cannot go to a startup or a large firm. It can only go to a researcher. If there is a consortia of researchers doing this proof of concept study, it's enough that one or a few of them are affiliated to KOAV. The budget is 25 million, but per application, 1 to 4 million is what we would expect in an application. And the last part Olli mentioned before. So this is the process. Now, we have a kind of tight deadline this year. It is a pilot study. It is a pilot year. So sorry for the squeezed time schedule. But this is a yearly call, so you will have a next chance next year. But now during June and August, there will be an application open. So 17th of August, we will close the application. Then there is a expert review phase hosted by SciLifeLab, where they prioritize the applications so that up to 20 go into the Wallenberg Launchpad funnel. And as Olli mentioned, that part is mainly about coaching the projects to go into a pitch phase. And it's still the project that you pitch towards the VALP committee. So as you can see, approximately 20 will be prioritized from the expert review panel. And then we have a session during the autumn where we can iterate on this pitch and we discuss more how you will use the money and what you will use it for. And then there is a pitch session, a couple of time slots during the autumn in November, December, I think it would be. And then if you are granted, then you can do your project for up to 2 years. So that's the time schedule. And as you can see, it's a little bit fewer projects that will be granted finally. I think it will be around 7 to 10. Let's see after this year. Which means that during the coaching period, it's still a matching session if this project is really a VALP project that will be granted. And in the end, it's the head of the executive director of Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation who will grant the project. And as you can see, the program itself, it can both expand your team so that you get all the necessary competence. It can help you to build a minimal viable product, so getting all the supplies there or buying equipment. And during this time, we also want you to establish deeper relationships to potential takers or stakeholders to your potential innovation. So this is what we expect from a project description. I want to highlight some parts here. So first of all, it needs to be very clear what research your project comes from, what problem you want to solve, and how you want to solve it, especially the uniqueness and the innovative height. What is a little bit different, I think, from a typical research grant is that we also need a major outlook on what's out there on the market already, both from other researchers, but also from the industry. So make use of Google to understand where you are in the field. We also want an external party or several parties to verify the pain point that you show in your problem statement, so that we see that there is an interest out there. So it's not only something that you think is very important within your group, but it's actually any taker out there that is also interested in your idea. It can be anything from a potential collaborator or partner, or a user of your method or process or product, someone who wants to buy your product or so. It can be an investor that says that if I get this updated information, then I would like to invest in your startup, for example. So we don't care so much about who the stakeholder is, but there needs to be a verification outside of your team. You need to have a plan for the IP. As I said, this is a bridge gapping exercise where we want you to be able at least to have an idea on how to commercialize this afterwards, or if there is someone else who's interested in developing this further on. So a plan for the IP, some basic information about an addressable market, and then, of course, the detailed description on what you actually want to do during this project. So both, or I would say, so first of all, it needs to be in a work package format. So the different work packages have their own main goals, purposes, milestones, and scientific rationale. And it needs to be very clear how those parts leads to a potential innovation or commercialization value. We're very interested in the team who's going to do this. So this is not the way of funding your current PhD one more year, but actually we want to see how you will build the strongest team for taking this into the next step. So if you need to complement the team, for example, and there the university regulations apply. So it can, of course, be that you hire consultants for this, if this is allowed at your university, or it can be that you employ someone to be in your group, or that you set up a collaboration. Yes, and the time plan, budget, and the desired outcome after the project completion. So as you can hear, it's very focused on what will be the next step. So I think one of the main things you should think about already now is what you actually want to do when this project is over, and kind of backtrack from there, what your project can be about. I think we mentioned most of these things already. So a little bit about the timeline. The call opens today. It ends at 13, so midday, on August 17. We will have the first revision with the expert panel during September. So the information, if you're not among the top 20 candidates, will be out in end September. And for the top 20 candidates, we will have then this iterative discussions and coachings, me and my colleagues, during the autumn. And up to 10 then will be recommended to KV for the funding. So all the decisions of the grants will be made before the end of the year. And as I said, it's a yearly call. So again, I want to pinpoint what I think will be the most pressured parts on the timeline as we're heading into the summer. First of all, to figure out who could be an external party who can verify your idea. The verification doesn't need a letter of intent or very formal. It can be an email from a stakeholder that is important to you. But you need that external verification to be eligible for the grant. And for the proof of concept study, it needs to be well defined and value creating. So also think about how to frame that and who should be in the project. And for all of those parts that I said that we can only support the academic research with this. We cannot support patent filings or market analysis. But you have the innovation offices that have the possibility to support those kind of activities. So if I were you, I would just knock on the door and see if they can help you forming this grant. And we have alerted, I think, most of the innovation offices that this is coming out. So I would recommend doing that. Olli.
Okay, thanks so much, Elin. So we are more or less at the end, and just sort of get you ready for questions. We just present a few questions that we've been already asked and get you warmed up. So think about what you might want to learn from us now. Obviously, we haven't been able to describe every little detail and every little thought, but it's also important to state that this is the pilot year, like Elin was saying, that we are testing it out. We will run this, we will make decisions, we will go through the whole process. So it's real in that sense. But we will learn from this process, and we are ready to make certain adaptations to how this is happening this year in the future years as well. So maybe also the rules and the regulations and the concept of this call may be further defined in the years ahead. But that's roughly how things will happen this year. So the common question has always been, who can apply? And I think it's very clear if you are a KV-funded scientist, you are eligible per se. If you belong to these entities such as SciLifeLab in particular, if you are a group leader, if you are a DDLS group leader, you are eligible as well. If you are an infrastructure person working in the infrastructure, you can apply. And it's not like we are going to have a sharp definition. You're in, you're out. It's all like sort of a relative to the contributions and to each case. So don't take it like you're never going to have a grant if you don't apply. So please apply. That will be the first step to consider. So many have said, "Oh, you have such a tight deadline now. I can't make it now." But again, like Elin said, it's an annual call. You're going to get the next chance, and this may be either very subscribed call, the very first one, because there's a lot of pent up demand, or then there will be much more applications. I don't know. So let's see how it will go. Can the cost of IP or patent protection be covered? And that's not, like Elin said, not really the focus there. And it's related to this grant going to the universities and what universities will then typically be able to make use with the money. Then the concept again, and maybe this links to the who can apply. Some people have, well, I have a project at NGI. I'm just making it up, and it's can I apply? And that just being one of the 4,000 projects that run every year through SciLifeLab doesn't necessarily make you eligible. But if that has been really making that the thing that you've done with SciLifeLab has really made a huge impact and you've done really something fantastic, maybe. So again, it's not just black and white. Don't take it as too sharp a division in that sense. And I think one thing that you could consider in particular that many may have, well, I have an idea for drug discovery. Well, I would say that go and talk to DDD platform first, and then have a sort of them to consider their idea, and if they have and if they will come back to us after you have something. So it's really important that we can actually take the DDD lead molecules and be able to process those forward. At least they would have a high priority to be considered forward. But if you want to start a new drug discovery effort, you won't get very far with this funding, and maybe that is not the best use of that funding. But this is not per se, again, linked to DDD in that the DDD process as such. You can get your drug leads elsewhere as well, but consider that. And then people have said, well, if I've started already a spin-off company, can I still apply? Well, essentially, it's also a little bit depends. If you still have academic research going on at the same time and the company isn't really well funded or even at all funded, then maybe. But this is also dicey in the sense that we shouldn't be funding product development in the industry through this grant. So it also shouldn't be such that a company contacts a scientist. Can you run a proof of concept for us? That wouldn't work. So you see, that's answer is a bit like it depends. So most of these are not like black and white things. It depends on each case. But we try to give these as suggestions, like so that you know when you in particular are right in the core heart of this idea on what we are trying to accomplish here. But that was a couple of other questions, and now we are all open to any questions from you.
I guess there might be both in the audience and online, I suppose. We have one down there already.
Hello, thank you. My name is Katja Petzold. Very interesting. One of the questions I have, which I can't wrap my head around yet, is the external verification. I mean, now at this point we have an idea which is unprotected, most likely. So what we need is kind of an agreement of confidentiality. However, I am not very well versed in that. Would you provide letters or like pre-written statements we can use to actually reach out to people? Can you sign this, and would you interact with us? Could you give us guidelines of whom not to contact, maybe direct competitors or others, the better people? Those are... Yes. I think it's a good idea, but it's a hard to, how you say it?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. If I were you, first of all, I would contact your innovation office, because I think they both have these kind of agreements as templates, but also to iterate with them what you can and cannot say when you talk to external parties. Because most of the time you can tell a collaborator or a potential buyer of your product quite a lot without really revealing the secret sauce of it. So yeah, maybe not. So I would discuss with someone, and if that someone is the innovation office or someone else, I mean, you could potentially reach out to us as well. But I would discuss it with the innovation office first, at least. I think that's my recommendation.
I would say it's a typical problem in any case, because at some point you need to contact somebody, be it a funder or a sort of a company. So at some point you need to solve your dilemma in any case. This is just another reason for you to solve that.
So I mean, sometimes you can also reverse the question. What type of problem does that if it's someone who should buy your product or I don't know, develop your drug target or whatever it is, what is necessary from your side to provide to them in order for them to be interested? And I mean, that's a back reversed question on what is basically the statement of what you need to do in order for them to be interested. So if you do those things, they will be interested. But then you don't need to say anything about what you're doing directly.
Maybe just to add on that, obviously all of you may be aware of the fact that when you are in a university, you need to be careful when you interact with outside, and also when you interact with your confidential applications, sending them in and out and so forth. So therefore, like in this case, it's CoAV collecting the applications. We at SciLifeLab are not collecting the applications, because we also are concerned and sensitive to the fact that there is confidential information as part of these grant rounds, and therefore we try to protect that as well. But be careful, obviously. So it's absolutely right. What you are concerned about is very true and tricky. So navigate well.
We also got the similar question from the online participants here, if the submitted applications are public documents like in VR, but they're not then.
So there will be no public documents. We will not even state who got the grants, at least not this year, because we don't want to disclose what's funded at this moment.
So in other words, don't expect feedback from your grant or don't expect reasons why your grant was not awarded. This is not a public process in the same way as at SciLifeLab we would otherwise usually do.
Hi, my name is Cynthia, and thank you for your presentations. I wonder, I mean, I think this is tied up to what it's been talked about right now, and since this is supposed to be protected with IP, how much are you expecting the applications to be revealing about the invention? Is it supposed to be very general, or how much in detail are people going to be talking about, given that it's going to be confidential? Are people revealing what it is exactly and the house and etc.?
Yeah, so typically we would expect a detailed description of the uniqueness in some way. So maybe not, the drawing of the invention itself, but actually what the important parts are. So if it's a drug target, you still need to describe, the research you have done so far, so that we know where you are in the process. It would be the same for any other type of experimental project. So we would like you to disclose what your innovation is about, but you don't need to go to the detailed level of a patent application, of course. So they need to state if they are have any conflict of interest. So then they will not disclose, read the application.
Well, maybe I should say that we are staying relatively close to the SciLifeLab community when we select the reviewers. So we are not going to go out to ask a big pharma. We are not going to ask to go out to a company which has no involvement in the community when we review these. So it's not going to be that level of competitors out there if you're concerned about international sort of there's no international, well, maybe that's what we can say, that unlikely that there's much of any international reviewers as part of this process.
And just to be clear, they have a secrecy agreement with us, so they cannot disclose or use anything they will learn from the applications.
Okay, should I continue with the online questions? So there's one is asking, is the call open also for recipients of clinical fellow grants from MMW?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. How important is the track record of the applicant versus a project proposal?
Say that again.
So how important is the track record of the applicant versus the project proposal?
We will look at both, but it's difficult to say beforehand, I would say.
But maybe say it that way, that the past experience, because this is really a bridging exercise. So we do not want to restrict this grant only to those who are like the serial entrepreneurs who have a lot of previous experience. This is meant for newcomers in the field, so you can manage without that type of experience. Then the other track record is obviously the scientific track record. Well, to some extent you need to have a scientific track record to be credible, but this is not an evaluation of scientific merits per se of the applicant. This is the scientific merits of the innovation that is in question. So,
and yet I can just add, so I mean we have granted projects so far, as I said, for the other types of projects mainly. There have been, first-year fellows that got the grants, and it has been serial entrepreneurs. So the track record in that sense doesn't really matter. It's as Olli said, the innovation and the idea that we look at.
Okay.
Can we do one live?
I'll take one in between. Can an individual researcher from outside of Sweden apply?
Well, I guess in principle, if there is a link to Sweden, but you do need to have this eligibility that you need to be part of this. I don't think that the location per se is that, but I think then the commercialization and utilization has to also have some link to that. So again, it's not, sorry to be diffuse, almost like not answering the question, but we don't want to set exact yes and no things here. That again depends. But if it's totally somebody from the outside with no relationship, no previous funding, unlikely.
So you stated in your kind of slideshow that the support for a project would be 1 to 4 million. Is that per year or in total?
Per grant.
Per grant in total?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. So I was wondering, when you work with method developments, sometimes you develop a thing that you think is useful for something, but then eventually can be useful for other stuff. So in the application, is it better to keep it focused on the thing you have in mind or the broad potential of the invention you have?
I think you can mention the potential, but since it is very focused, the grant itself with the milestones and the clear project description, I would go for a focused application to start with, but definitely elaborate on the scope.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we want you to take mini steps on the way to getting out there. So the clarity, I think, is very important.
Shall I take one more here? Okay, so someone here is asking about international team, for example, Sweden, USA. Would that score lower due to the international nature?
It depends.
Yeah. No, not per se, I would say.
Not as such, absolutely not. But again, it depends on how that will lead to the next steps. Like, will this mean that then the Swedish person or the Swedish link is a small part of a major international team, and most likely the whole thing will develop forward in the US side with US funding. So maybe that's not the ideal outcome from the Swedish perspective in that sense. But again, per se, no, absolute no to something like that.
Yeah, and maybe I can just add, I mean, the overall aim from Coavie is, of course, that Coavie-funded research will have a pipeline out to making impact in society. So if that's a small part of the team that's Coavie-affiliated or a large part, it doesn't really matter as long as there is, a funnel out into society in some way.
Okay, I have some startup related questions. So the first one is, if an academic researcher can an academic researcher apply if the IP has already been transferred to a startup company?
So yes, but not for that invention, I would say, because that's already patented and secured. We have had projects where there had been a next step or development of something that has already been patented, that has been granted. So it's the same there. It's a gray zone, I would say. If it has gone so far, so it's actually industrial product development, then I think it's too far. It's not the scope of the program. But if it's, an incremental increase in the usefulness of this product or process, then it's something else. So it's very much about the scope and the aim.
Yes, and I guess also this other question here maybe is, supposing a researcher is already involved in a startup, can he or she still participate with an early phase project if this will be conducted in their labs?
Yes.
I guess that's yes.
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 But again, the important in that sense is that they describe the status.
Yeah.
Because we would not like to be blinded to the fact that there are already commercial activities underway. You will probably get in difficulties down the line in the valve process if you have not disclosed how the IP has been handled. And many scientists are such that they have a commercialization, a company taking care of their innovations going forward, but then they will still do research in the broad area. So then obviously they can still file new applications as well, but it has to be explained how it relates to the company's activities, and it doesn't overlap exactly with something that already the company is developing forward on a private side.
Yes, and I think that you answer. So there are many questions about these startup connections and so on, and we won't answer all of them, I guess, today, but they will be answered. So you can also, I mean, the people that have asked these questions and didn't really get the exact answer they wanted, they can also fill in the forms we have on the
Yes.
on the webpage. Another question is, will this grant be coordinated with support from the innovation offices? And you talked about this.
So it's not coordinated with innovation offices, but they are alerted. So I would definitely make use of their expertise and also potentially, so they have also grants that they can use for other commercial type of activities. So I mean, the grant here is purely academic with the potential to be commercialized. So I would go to them for support, but they are not involved in the process and evaluation.
Okay, so Anonymous here is asking, could you tell a bit more what will happen at the coaching step?
So at the coaching step, we will of course discuss your idea and try to help you to frame it in the best way we can. So it's me and my colleague Shandor has been involved in several of these projects, and me myself, I was working in the innovation office as a business coach before. So we will try to iterate the idea, to specify the idea so that it's focused enough, and of course look at the different parts to help you at the pitch session. So I mean, it's a pitch coaching in the sense that we want you to frame it as good as possible. And during this project or coaching session, of course there might be parts that are where we realize that this is not the perfect fit for the grant, or that there are some ideas that have higher potential than the others in any different way, or that we try so it's not 7 out of the 10 that would be drug discovery projects or so. There would be some kind of selection during this process, and since it's a pilot year, we haven't set any fixed rules for how that will be yet. We will need to talk to the prioritized researchers. But the coaching part is there to help you. It's not to deselect you in that sense.
But maybe I should also just say that because you're asking all these questions, who is eligible, who is not, at the end it will actually be in the WALT process that the final sort of decisions will be made. So that's why it's sort of if we can't give you a direct answer, the answer will come as you process through this pipeline.
So thanks. Is this on? Yeah, great. So thanks for a nice presentation, and it's going to be fun to see this minimal viable product develop it further. But Elin, a follow-up question. You said that the innovation offices will be alerted. Does that mean that we get to know who gets funded, or do we get to know who is about to get funded, maybe if they pass the pitching step, or will we just know about the call?
You will know that there might be researchers coming to you for support.
Okay, so since I work at the innovations office at KEA, I mean, I will not know that Professor X or PI Y will get money from you.
Not if they don't contact you directly. So we will not disclose to the innovation offices who got the grant. Yeah. But we will recommend to the researcher to contact the innovation office.
And I can mention we do have CDA templates, so just come to us and you get it.
Okay, then I can take a question. We already started a company with the methodology. Can we use the proof of concept to use this methodology for a case study, developing a product with this methodology?
Potentially, yes, I would say. Yeah, back to what Olli has been saying. It's all about the scope and what you will. So please disclose in that case where you are and why this study is so important for you to take the next step.
And how it's not just the company's product development,
exactly.
Because that's not what we should be funding here. So how is it separate from that?
So I think, for the work packages, really highlighting the scientific rationale. So it's not, just taking it, making something a little bit better, but actually understanding a mechanism or de-risking your project in some way, minimizing errors or whatever it would be. That's interesting. And to some extent, I think any project that is too boring to be published in science, I think this is really that type of research you can do with this money that can't really be funded by a basic research grant, because it's basically not maybe high enough level to be nature science material. That's how I think about it. But still scientifically interesting.
Okay, so you mentioned before the possibility to hire consultants, but if the grant does not cover innovation analysis, they will not cover a regulation expert, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's I mean, the consultants in this case will be used for the research project, if that's allowed by your university.
I think the question, I don't know this, TRL stage, the project addresses, for example, early pre-T1.
Early
question.
pre...
TRL is a
Yeah.
TRL level.
Yeah, so the technology readiness levels, it's 9 different steps going from a hypothesis to a launched product. So I would say the very early stage, the first hypothesis, I think that's too early. But I think when you start to have, I think it's 2, 3, you will have a basis from your research project, but you still haven't gotten to a minimal viable product or a proof of concept step. So, and I don't remember exactly the levels there, but if it's 4 or 5. So if you read the instructions to the call, there is a link to the TRL levels by SciLife, I think it is there. It's one version of them, specifically for life science ideas. It does not cover everything. It does not have all aspects, but you can see a little bit on the different levels what the typical development plan would be. But then after 4, 5 and up, then it's really product development. So it's not really what we do here, or clinical development if it's a drug, for example. So that's beyond the scope here, I would say.
So I think we're out of questions for now.
For now.
Okay. Well, you can obviously contact I mean, there's a contact email, I think, in the web pages, and we'll be happy to sort of address this even more, but most important, just apply, particularly if you're concerned whether this does fit into the call or not. I mean, we can address that. But I guess we just close this for today then. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks everybody for being online. Good luck with your applications. Send many of them, but not too many. So we'll try to sort of make this process run to the best of our abilities. So I look forward to that. And thanks again. And thanks, Elin.
Thanks for coming.